Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Nicholas Sonnenberg on the line, and he's CEO and co-founder over at Leverage. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Nick. So guilty over here. I was excited to bring you on today because when I saw the show notes, I'm like, hey, I'm probably making some of the mistakes and messing up on some of the things we're going to talk about. So today's topic, how your team can leverage systems and tools to stop drowning in work. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives out there that are going to have some of these similar problems. So definitely excited to bring your work and all the great stuff you're doing over at Leverage. And maybe just to get us started out, Nick, it makes sense to tell us a little bit more about the company, please.
Sure. So we help businesses with operational efficiency. We consult, advise, integrate, coach people on what tools and systems and processes they should be implementing in their business in order to maximize the efficiency of their team and their organization. And especially, while everyone's remote with, what's going on with COVID, it's absolutely critical that you have these systems and tools so that you can still be connected and get a lot of work done with your team.
So, Nick, at the end of this, I'll give you the opportunity to leave your website or social media, or really wherever you want to send individuals and organizations that are listening to learn more about Leverage and to connect with your team. But I do want to make sure that the correct types of organizations connect. What's typically a good fit to work with your team over at Leverage, whether it's size of company, niche, industry? Like what's normally a good client for you?
Well, lately we've been getting bigger and bigger clients, but we identified through the 5 years we've been doing this, we've worked with two-person gas and water leak detection companies that do a couple $100,000 a year, all the way up to Tony Robbins, Ethereum, Poopery. Right now we're working with a 60 billion with a B dollar company. So it totally ranges. Doesn't matter the industry. It doesn't matter the size. What we found was every business, no matter what, there's three components that every business needs to, at a very minimum, be thinking about in order to be a high-performing organization. And so we have a framework called CPR. It stands for Communicate, Plan, and Resource. And again, doesn't matter the industry or size, every business, no matter what, yours and mine included, you need to communicate with people internally and externally. You need to have a plan. So you need to be able to delegate tasks and projects. You need to be able to answer basic questions like, what's the most important thing I need to work on right now? What's the status of this project? What's blocked? What to expect by a certain person by a certain date. And then resource is all about documenting knowledge. Static knowledge, which would be your SOPs, and dynamic knowledge, which would be your processes. So at a very, very, very minimum, Adam, these are the things that every business needs to be thinking about. The problem is most businesses don't have any strategy in terms of where information should live and how information should be transferred amongst the organization and team. And so what you end up having is a scavenger hunt problem in your business. And usually when I say the word scavenger hunt, people usually can identify where it's oh, did Adam text me, or is that in an email, or is that in a Slack message? Or I think that we started chatting in Asana about that. And before you know it, you spend more time looking for information than getting work done. You know what I mean? So ultimately, this framework helps remove the scavenger hunt from your business. And we try to shift focus because most business owners are optimizing for the wrong thing. They're optimizing for speed of transfer of information, in which case that's what creates all this operational debt. If you just want to optimize speed of transfer, just text everyone and everything's quick. But if you want to actually set up the business properly, you should be thinking about speed of retrieval of information. And if that's the focus, which is what we advise and we consult on, in order to optimize speed of retrieval, you need to have a framework and strategy in terms of where and when information should live in various places. And so that's my long-winded answer for your question. It doesn't matter the size or the industry. However, our typical client right now is around $10 million a year, but we have people that are $1 million right now. And then, like I said, we have some that are in the multi-billion.
So, Nick, I'm one of those low-hanging fruit guys. So I know there's a lot we can do, and I know your strategic planning capabilities. I mean, I know you're working with a lot of companies here, and you've seen a lot too. So the amount, working with a team like you and a company like you, like yours, it's interesting because you live in that space all day trying to solve problems and helping with efficiency. So it's just common sense. You're like the SWAT team for efficiency. You're going to get in there and get the job done. But that being said, I am a low-hanging fruit guy, and I think about like what's actionable today. And obviously every business is going to have a different problem, need, especially size, revenue, all that's going to change. But at least to give, there's common themes, or if it's a common framework, like what is something that somebody that's listening right now can take away today, and even if it's just a thought process, so that they can like start making changes like absolutely like today.
Right. Well, first of all, before directly answering that, the sooner you start thinking about this, the easier. So if you're listening right now and you have a small team and you're doing $2 million a year and you're like, oh, well, these people working with billion-dollar companies were so much smaller, it's irrelevant. It's not true. The sooner you get this done, the easier it is to scale your business, because the complexity of an organization scales exponentially with team size. When you're a team of, for example, 10 people, there's around 50 ways that information can be transferred between those people if you just graph it out. If you go to 100 people, it's not 10 times more. It's not 500. It's 5,000 ways to connect. So it grows exponentially. The low-hanging fruit, and this is not a one-size-fits-all. One of the key things that we do for businesses is we do what's called a roadmap, where we basically do a CAT scan diagnostic on their systems and processes and identify the lowest hanging fruit, because every business has a million things to optimize. No business is perfect, including mine. And it's really important that you choose to do things in a strategic order, because you don't get any value rolling out one thing partially and a bunch of things partially. You need to get it rolled out to a certain degree so you start getting the value out of what you've done, and then you get a return on time, just like you think about return on investment. It's like a return on time. So you do one thing, you save an hour a week, you reinvest that hour into rolling out the next thing. In general, and again, I just did one of these yesterday for a airplane company, and their order was not this, but typically optimizing how you communicate is usually the most broken and highest leverage opportunity. And specifically, how you use email is usually the most broken tool in someone's tool belt. And if you clean up and you teach people how to actually manage email properly and get to inbox zero, that alone can save every person in the company a couple hours a week. Because most of the time, it's about micro wins. It's about a 1 second gain, a 10-second gain, a 1 minute gain, but you try to find hundreds or thousands of those. But teaching people how to manage email properly, that could just be in one shot, a couple hours a week.
That's awesome. Great advice there, and I know we're just really scratching the surface on this topic, but I do want to give, and I know we're almost out of time, but I do want to cover one last thing here. So give us, and I know we could spend hours on this one, but give us a little bit of insight into what a strategic planning session looks like with your company.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the end of the year now, so we're doing this for ourselves, but we have a process that we follow to do our planning, and essentially there's a specific order to doing planning for us. So the stuff that we do, everything that we do for clients is because we've stress tested it on ourselves. And so the way that we do strategic planning is we start with the year, and we don't put targets. Targets come at the very, very end. We follow loosely the framework of OKRs, objectives and key results. But, in 1 minute, the way that we do it is before anything, you come up with a theme for the year. You update every year we take a look at our vision and a mission and core values. But then we do yearly objectives and key results with the key initiatives or key projects that will help us achieve that. No targets. Then we go to quarterly. Same thing on the company. We align with the team on that. Then the departments do it. Then, and again, at each step, we're aligning on what matters most, because what you want to do is you want to say no to most things. You want to say no to the important so that you can say yes to the essential. And so after you do a few iterations of that, you clean up kind of what are the key projects that are going to help us achieve those key results. After all of that, then we do another round where we start coming up with realistic targets. Before all of that, so the realistic targets is the final step. Okay, we know exactly what we're doing. We're going to be the most efficient company in the world as measured by X, Y, and Z, and we have to get X to this, Y to this. Before all of that, we even have some pre-work where we're doing yearly retrospectives. How did the year go? We're reviewing our dangers, opportunities, and strengths. So there's a lot of pre-work that happens before we even get into the skeleton of the objectives and key results. And then once all of that is nailed down, we have a really interesting process for our weekly sprints to ensure and almost guarantee that we're going to be on track to hit those targets that we had set.
Wonderful. I love it. And I would expect you to have a well thought out process like this, because that's how you're saving people time. That process, like if you would have said, well, it's kind of hard to explain, that would have been a red light. No, no, I know you guys are and I love that you stress tested on yourself, because everything we've done over here at Mission Matters, like every little thing. I had a call earlier today and they're like, wow, that's a great idea, this or that. And I'm like, I'm not that smart. Like we found that through trial and error, through a lot of planning and time and a lot of getting it wrong. So now you have the benefit of that, like of that pain I went through, or we went through as a team. I love it.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, actually today, or recently, Asana, which is the tool that we use, just featured us in their blog about how we do planning. So you could go.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big tool. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. So you could, if you Google like Asana and leverage sprint planning, you could probably pull that article up, and that goes into a bit more detail about what I just described.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, Nick, I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today, and thank you for all the insight that you gave. I know I have some things that I have to go back and rethink. If somebody is listening to this and they want to learn more about leverage, or they want to connect with you and your team, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
They could just go to getleverage.com, getleverage.com, and they could check out what we're up to. We've got a lot of free content. I have a podcast too, the Leverage Podcast. Books. I'm a writer for Inc., so there's a ton of free material. If you're listening to this and you're interested, you go to the website and you could get a lot of resources off the website.
Fantastic. Well, Nick, again, appreciate you coming on the show. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you're a first-time listener, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. It's a subscribe button. I want you to come back, be a return listener. We have some more great guests coming up for you, and don't want you to miss out on that. And Nick, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.